Good morning. Welcome everyone to the 6-month Inspector General Committee meeting on today, May 17th. We will first start the agenda with call to order and skip right to the roll call.
Okay. State Attorney Ehrenberg. Public Defender Howitt. Chair Schulman.
Present.
Vice Chair Cumberland.
Present.
Commissioner Kreidel.
Present.
Commissioner Cruz.
Here.
Commissioner Romano. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3, introductory comments. For myself, I will just invite anybody who wishes to speak during the public comment session to please fill out a comment card so that we can make sure we call on you and you have an opportunity to speak. And if everybody could make sure their cell phones are silenced or on vibrate, we have a very thorough presentation today. Any other comments by way of introduction from any of the commissioners? Okay, we'll go into item 4, approval of the Inspector General Committee meeting minutes from November 9th, 2017. Assuming everybody has had a chance to review those minutes, are there any motions?
I move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Cumberland, seconded by Commissioner Kreidel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes from November 9th, 2017 are approved. And that brings us to agenda item number 5, the 6-month status report. We will call on Inspector General Carey to make his presentation.
Well, good. Am I on? I don't think it's on. Testing. There's not an on. Let me check to see if the other one on the other side is on. Test.
They're both on from our side.
Testing. Testing. There we go. Thank you. Okay, well, good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
Commissioners, again, thank you for hearing us today, and I look forward to briefing you. And again, any time along the way as we do, if you have any questions or comments, please stop me, and I'll answer them. And I have my entire staff here too, the people who do the hard work to answer the questions for you. So our 6-month brief, we'll start out here's an outline of what we're going to speak to today. And I always like to start out with our mission because, again, we're proud of our mission and we talk about it all the time, is to provide independent and objective insight, oversight, foresight in promoting integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness in government, ultimately enhancing public trust in government. And I like to say it, and a lot of times we say it in one way, is really making good government better, going alongside people and helping to make good government better. And I also like to put it really in, when I speak to people, to put this down in real people speak about what is this oversight, insight, and foresight. Oversight in holding government accountable for all of our taxpayer dollars that we spent, holding government accountable for the power that we have, but much more than that, it's insight, helping good people make government better, more efficient and effective. And then foresight is the best thing I think IGs can do, is the preventative nature of our work and educating, being out there, providing advice and guidance, best practices to help prevent bad things from happening. So the better foresight that we do, the less reactive work that we have to do. Now, I'd like to start out too in just introducing some of our new team members. Really proud of the new additions to the team. Liz Garrick's investigator. Liz, can you raise your hand? There you go. Liz, she has experience in working as an investigator at the state and local government. She started out her career as an investigator with the New York City in the New York City Jails Department, working for the New York Department of Corrections. She investigated employee misconducts, inmate deaths, so that was her start in the investigation world. As an investigator in Florida, she was with the Florida Department of Children's and Families Office of Inspector General, and there she investigated fraud, waste, abuse within the department. She's got a master's in criminal justice, specializing in investigative techniques from the well-renowned John Jay University in New York of criminal justice. She's also a certified IG investigator. We also have Phil Johnsey joined our staff. Phil, on the auditor side, Phil is another great catch. Again, he's got his degree in computer information systems management. He has over 18 years experience in operations and management, including information technology security, systems administration, enterprise project management, staff management, e-discovery, forensics, and this is a good thing, forensic incident response, and he's led many computer forensic investigations in multiple government entities. He's also the president of our local Toastmasters organization here, and he's also a mentor for information technology security professionals. Some of his certifications include Information Security Essentials, Certified Criminal Justice and Information Systems. So Phil is a great addition to the team. We've been looking for an IT expert to start doing our IT audits, and that's a real risk around the county that we're going to be launching into here in the near future with Phil. And then finally, Teresa Michael. Teresa is an addition to our investigator staff. She's worked in the Florida Inspector General community for over 21 years, and she's held positions from investigator, inspector specialist, lead inspector specialist, investigations coordinator, investigations manager, director of investigations, and most recently, here's the important thing, she was the Inspector General for the Florida Department of Financial Services. So we were able to get her to come down here from Tallahassee. We're so glad to have her. She's a certified Inspector General investigator, a certified fraud examiner, Florida certified contract manager, and a certified inspector general. So these are some great additions to the team that they're already, I mean, they're folks that immediately when they walked in the door, we're able to put them to work, and they're doing good things for the county. So now we're going to get into some of our activities that we've done in the past 6 months. Here's a summary of all of our intake activities over the past 6 months. As you can see, even though the calls and number of calls have reduced somewhat, the number of correspondences increased, and of those, again, a higher percent of the correspondence were complaints of wrongdoing. And I'd like to just emphasize, you see the hundreds of calls that come into our offices and complaints that come in every 6 months. Of that, Angie Ferguson. Angie, where are you? Right over here, Angie. Angie and Cynthia. Is Cynthia here? Cynthia Sorrell in our intake department. Every single complaint that comes in, we take serious. And we do a thorough analysis from the very start about, first of all, is this in our jurisdiction? Is this in our area of what we would be handling? So that's the first thing. But they do a thorough analysis, and the first thing, they compare it to standards. If this is true, if this allegation is true, what standard would it be violating? Which is critical, because sometimes we get complaints that, for example, people are unhappy with the way a city council voted, and they think it didn't represent what the citizens would like. well, as unfortunate as that might be, there's no standard that it violates. So we try to, if they do not have a standard, to work with the complainant, help us find a standard that violated, a law, a policy that it violated. The next critical piece, so there's really two pieces of an intake process, is what's the standard and then what's the evidence. We also have a number of complaints that people will bring to us that they think something is wrong, they have a suspicion, or they have rumors. And we tell citizens that we really can't investigate rumors or suspicions. We just have to have one piece of evidence. Can you point us to somebody or a document, a person, somebody who witnessed wrongdoing, and we'll follow up on that. But again, sometimes in the very start, we make a lot, the nature of Inspector General work, we make a lot of people happy when we find things and find people are either committing wrongdoing. We make sometimes the complainant happy. Sometimes complainants aren't that happy when they bring us information and they would like us to investigate things, and we have to inform them. We just don't investigate, again, suspicions without some information. Or when we investigate sometimes and we find out the allegation is not substantiated. And that, again, sometimes it makes the person we're investigating happy, but the person who complained sometimes not happy. But the one thing we can say, every investigation, every audit, every contract oversight we do a thorough job, and we get to the facts, we get to the truth. So it all starts with Angie and Cynthia, and it came down to this time there were 9 of all of these complaints that came in. 3 of them started with investigations. 4 of them were referred to our contract oversight team, and 2 of them were referred to the audit. So that's another value of the Inspector General concept that I'll talk later about. What's the difference between Inspector Generals and internal auditors? Inspector Generals have a consolidated team of audit, investigations, and contract oversight, and a hotline that when complaints and issues come in, whether they're coming in or whether they're proactive, we have a whole team of experts of a wide variety of experiences to look into these issues. And we don't have to stop and refer it to somebody else until it becomes a criminal activity, and then we refer it to law enforcement and work closely, usually with them. We work very closely with the state attorney's office.
General Carey,
Yes, sir.
I noticed that the public information requests went up about 300%.
Yes.
Was something going on that was the genesis of such a really precipitous increase?
There are, public records increase goes up and down, I've seen since I've been here. There are a number of times when they go up because citizens, a lot of times citizens want to see what was the background and the information that caused you to make your decisions in this report. So a lot of times it's from the citizenry, most all the time it's from the citizenry who wants to see information. And then sometimes it goes up because we provide citizens some information, and then they determine they need more information. So some of these requests are from the same individuals, but they're multiple requests asking for more, because a lot of times they try to limit their expense in just seeing their very documents, right? Because if you say, I want to see everything, that's a lot of paperwork, and so that's money and that's time that required to put it together. So sometimes it's from citizens with multiple requests.
Thank you.
Again, and speaking about the complaints, again, this is very standard. This is the standard process of people complaining. The majority of our complaints do come from the citizenry. And then we have the next category, which is consistent with our past, is their anonymous complaints. And again, most of those anonymous complaints are from government employees who wish to remain anonymous for their fear of potential retaliation, or their concern that they would rather not have their name associated with the complaint. And that's something that individuals underneath our ordinance have the right to be anonymous if they so choose. And that's standard throughout inspector generals at all level of governments. Now, specifically into the activity of the investigations division, again, you could see about the same. We have 12 ongoing investigations. We have one report I'll talk about later on, one case referred to law enforcement. 5 recommendations made, and all of those were accepted in this one case. There was no money this time that we found, and that happens sometimes. Sometimes it's about money, sometimes it's about character behavior or things that are non-monetary that we investigate. And I just want to say, you met, again, we introduced Liz and Teresa, and last time I introduced Stu Robinson. Where's Stu? I tell you, Stu, I just cannot brag enough on Stu. Came into us, again, he's a retired FBI agent who lived in this area, who worked with all the law enforcement, the agencies, retired. He went down to Broward County and worked in their inspector general office as a senior manager, investigator down there. So he got his transition from law enforcement into the IG world at Broward, and then we were able to recruit him and bring him up here. And he just has such a wealth of background and contacts and information about the county and about investigations. He's done such a great job in a small time with us. We also have Chris Dykmans here. We'll talk about Chris. Gene Areola and Hisai Tanaka with us too from the investigations office.
General Carey, question that I have regarding the first line of your ongoing investigations. In the previous 6-month period, there were 13. In the current 6-month period, there are 12. Of the 12 in the current period, what portion of them were also in the previous period? What was carried over?
Well, the one that we just completed, this report, there are actually 2 reports you'll see. There's one report in this 6-month period, and then we completed one just outside of the period that we thought, since it's close, we'll speak about that. So one of those is the case I'll brief next that we completed, and then the other one is another case that I'll brief later on in the presentation. So 2 of those were in last month, so that we closed out. So we closed out 2, but we received another investigation, and so it's fluid throughout that time. Did that answer the question?
No.
Okay.
And I understand that in your presentation, in your slide deck, you've got the post March 31, 2018
Yes.
investigations. I'm asking about the September 30 period, where you had 13 investigations. And in the April 30, you had 12?
Yes.
Of that 12, how many of them were also being investigated in the previous
Okay.
6-month period?
Off the bat, I don't have the exact number. I think at least 10 of those, around 10 of those. Is that right, Stu?
We've cycled through and opened 3, 4, 5, trying to do the math in my head, new investigations. So
Around 9 or 10 then.
numbers are similar, but some of the new ones have replaced some that were classified.
Yeah.
Or reported on, as Inspector General Carey said. So we've not only cycled through some that have been reported on, there's also 3, 4, 5 new ones that have taken the place of ones that were part of that 13 number that are well predicated and absolutely fine.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, so some of these numbers, it's like in law enforcement, sometimes you've got cases going, and there are just sometimes that you go far enough down the road, you start looking into it, and there's just not enough to merit a report or follow-on information. We see initially there was something to investigate, and you just stop, and then, so this is a fluid
General Carey,
number.
Yes, I guess, not to speak for Commissioner Kreidel, but I think non-duplicated counts might be informative to have sort of a breakout as which are new and which are
Okay.
carryovers, just sort of, we got that sort of
Okay.
explanation now, but I think that's
So
what we
new,
were
a
trying to do.
category, we'll look at that, like investigations open during this reporting period.
Right.
We'll add that
I think
to,
That's going to be very helpful.
okay, so we'll add that to a new investigations, which would be a subcategory of that have been open, and other ones that, and maybe a category we'll put that have been closed or closed out without reports. Thank you. So that case, the one case we talked about during that time, and again, that was investigator Gene Areola did that case. That was on the Riverbend, the county, the Riverbend caretaker. And what we found in this case, the parks coordinator, allegations came in, we investigated them, and we did find that the parks coordinator utilized his county-issued computer and email account to conduct outside employment while he was on the county time. We also found that he directed his staff to not only maintain but fix up his house that he was getting ready to move into. And he also, and this was on the property though, this was a county house, but it just, they should have used other procedures rather than the parks personnel to be fixing up and working on the house. We also found that he utilized his county vehicle and a county generator for his personal use. So we referred it back to the county. Again, they accepted all of the recommendations that we made on that, and most of our recommendations, I believe, have been, in fact, I know, have been implemented in this case. Now, contract oversight. Again, I like to mention, and you've met before, Karen Mayer, our head of contract oversight. Tony Montero is here also, and not with us today is Tiffany Thomas back in the office, minding the shop. Prevention and sharing best practices, and you will see that is a lot of their job of, again, prevention, being out there, attending these meetings. They attend multiple contract meetings, oversee the dollars. They have years of government experience in procurement and contracting oversight. Tony Montero, who in fact we'll talk about a case that he did a little bit later, the Riviera, or excuse me, the Delray Beach Lifeguard Towers. Tony Montero, just an example, he has 32 years of government contracting and procurement experience at the federal, state, and local levels. A real catch, a real expert in the field to look at areas like this. We issued 2 reports, made 3 recommendations, and they were accepted. Again, no dollar amount this time. That's just the way the business runs. Sometimes there's a lot of dollars and sometimes not. And they also issued a tips and trend, and this was, again, part of their education and that foresight role, and it was regarding recording meetings within the procurement process, the legalities of the necessary of when you're required to record a meeting and when you can just take notes. There's specifics in there that we passed out to particularly a lot of the cities who need to know some of this information. And just kind of a breakdown of where are all those oversight activities that were, the meetings we're attending and providing oversight to. Again, you could see 39% to the county, 53% the majority to the municipalities, and then the special districts that we attend is Solid Waste Authority and Children's Services Council, the 2 special districts that we provide oversight to. Now, Karen did a project. Again, she's a working manager, so she went out there and she does projects herself. She did a contract oversight review of the city of Boynton Beach. And again, when she was out there, some things we found that there was no documentation on the policies and procedures of the contract monitoring, no written policies and procedures about the manner in which the contract files should be maintained, no citywide contract risk assessment, tools being used, and staff resources available for contract monitoring are not focused on the efficiency and effectiveness. Now, I want to say here, and here was something sometimes that we find, the city was doing their business adequately. So they were doing the business well. They had a lot of senior people who had been in place doing the business. But what we found is they didn't have, again, the policies and procedures, the written things in place. And a lot of times what happens, here's where problems occur. When you have a senior manager, a senior procurement official, senior people working on areas, and they retire, they leave, and then you don't have any guidelines to go by. So it provides an increased risk that city funds could be expended improperly, or that errors could occur if you don't have that consistency policies. So this is an area where we went along, good people, doing things right, and we helped them make government better by recommendations, and they accepted all of them and putting them all in place. The next we have is our contract oversight report on the City of Delray lifeguard towers. And again, this is the one that Tony Montero reviewed. Again, some of the major allegations that the city awarded a request for proposals was improper, unfair, that there was only one bidder. The city did not confirm the vendor's qualifications. The specifications were limited, limited competition. The vendor qualifications were too restrictive, and the price was higher than other public purchases of similar items. Again, we reviewed the process, and we found out, yes, this was a lot of money, but the city followed their purchasing ordinance and policies, and they also, every time that we asked for information, they provided reasonable justification for all of their decisions and actions to award the contract. So this was a case where, yes, on the surface, it looks, I'm sure you saw that in the paper, very high price compared to some of the other lifeguard towers along the coast. Again, one of the, just a few of the reasons why it was higher is this is designed to, the lifespan of this tower is to exceed the lifespan of a lot of the other towers due to the nature of the materials that it was made with. It also, they provided for different comfort issues of the lifeguards in the tower. Some of the towers that they have, that the way they're designed and the materials, they're like a heat house inside. And so they decided that they wanted to have some comfort issues for the lifeguard who has to spend all day in there guarding the people who are out there swimming. So they got some materials which were less heat conductive. They also added in there some other safety features and security features to help secure the lifeguard tower so it was more secure from vandalism and theft and breaking in when nobody was there. So every time, again, through the procedure and the process that we looked at, yes, it was a lot of money. Again, we as IGs don't weigh in on that particular matter because that's up to the citizenry and their city council. You know, if they want to spend that much for a tower and it's justified and it's within their procedures, then it becomes an issue of, again, between the citizenry and their councils.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
I understand that there was no potential cost savings because they followed their own procedures, which is not for your team to question, and I respect that. I'm just wondering why you wouldn't consider that a question cost as far as the dollar amount that the contract team has been monitoring.
Well, a question cost, thank you, that's an excellent question. It goes back to the definition in the IG, this comes from the 1978 Inspector General Act that we and most IGs have that terminology. A question cost usually has to be something that it may not be waste or it may not be illegal, but it does not follow there's some regulation law, it may be necessary, but there's a law, there's a standard someplace that it violated. For example, if they would have gone outside, it would be question cost if they did not follow their own policies and procedures. That would have been question cost. Just the amount of the cost in and of itself, again, Delray Beach is a city that determines it wants to spend money, and has a higher resource or more resources to spend money on things. So in some ways, if they want to have a Cadillac lifeguard tower as opposed to a VW lifeguard tower, then that's something the city council, between the citizens and the city council. Many cities that doesn't have that much wealth or resources would say, no, we're not going to pay that much. But they decided, no, we think it's worth it to pay that much. And two, because the life of the tower is almost twice as much in the long run, that seems like a lot, but when you take it over the time of its lifetime, it will not be that expensive. So we did not question, that's why we didn't. Did that help?
I think so, if I understand correctly. You questioned it, but when you
Yes.
got the answer, you didn't question the answer.
Yes, yes, and we did not
It's no longer questioned.
categorize, yes. Our question was answered.
Okay,
Our question was answered, and it was not, there was nothing inappropriate, illegal that went outside of the bounds. So we did question it in a
Initially.
general term to do the investigation, to do the review. It was a review, not, but our questions was answered, and we found it within propriety. So then we did not list it in the report as something wasn't right in that money.
thank you.
Okay, now we're going to talk about audits. And right off the bat, again, I'm proud of everybody here, and particularly Megan Gaylord is right here. Megan, our Director of Audit. You can see she has done some outstanding changes within the way we're doing business in audit. Just one thing about the volume, if you notice right off the bat, we did 5 audit reports as opposed to 1 the last period. And what we're doing in Carrie layman terms, they say, well, how do you, of course they say, how do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. But Megan, what she's doing is taking smaller bites at a time. So she's reduced the scope of our audits so we can go in quickly and look at, in smaller scoped audits, to look at the high-risk areas and not look at such wide areas within the municipalities. So we can look at an area and we can get that audit done in a more timely manner to answer the basic questions in that. And if there's another area within the city, well, we'll come back later on and look at that. So she's changed the concept of the way we're doing our audit business, and this way we're able to produce more reports and more timely reports for the county and the cities that we provide the oversight to, so they can take immediate action to correct or make business better. So she's doing an excellent job there. 49 recommendations as opposed to 13. So you can see a lot more recommendations that we're issuing too with those reports to make government better and to help good government be better.
Right. The volume is clearly increased anywhere from 4 to 5 times for each of these line items. This particular agility that you've enhanced in the past 6 months, is this impacted positively, negatively, or not at all by your continued shortfall in staffing?
Well, we're doing the best. We're going to talk about that later. It's that half full, half empty glass. She has found a way to do the best with the limited staff that we have in using their expertise. And fortunately, we've filled up pretty much our audit staff since she came aboard with us. So she has hired some quality auditors. In fact, we've had Donna Wisniewski. Where's Donna? Donna's here. She's been with us from the start, and she's done a lot of these audits. She's been here. Pretty much everybody else that is here today. Megan is hired, is brought in here. Hillary Bojan, Hillary right here, Jennifer Timms, Kathy Davis, Kathy's here, and Roddy Adrava. Roddy's over here. And of course, Phil Jonesy. So she's using them, again, their expertise. They each have, she's very smart person. She did an assessment of what was their background, because all of them have audit experience at different places. So the first thing she did an assessment of what is their particular background, and then the first thing she did, she set them off on doing audits, individually audits, on areas that fit their background. So it's a good way to get adjusted into our office, like, okay, do something you're familiar with. Here's our processes of how we do business and something you're familiar, and then we're going to build on expanding each of the auditor's experience to learn other areas and to be able to help work with other areas. So she was smart in doing this, and if you notice, the dollar amount is about the same from what we found in the last 6 months. So we're finding smaller dollars often in the smaller audits, but it adds up to be about the same price as some of the larger, longer-lasting audits. So done well, doing great things, and I'll talk about some of those specific projects. Donna Wisniewski did this audit, the City of Lake Worth, their water utility services. And what she found there is that there was some significant control weaknesses. And again, as you can see, there's a pattern. Often we find lack of written policies. And a number of the cities have, depending on what the city is, can have a high turnover rate or turnover rate, and that's where you run into problems without the written policies and procedures. Inconsistent application of policies and procedures and guidelines, and the interfund loan completed without initial authorization. So again, we found some dollar value, found some savings for the city there. We made recommendations, and so far they're corrective actions. Again, like most cities, they take them immediately. They don't wait for us to issue the report. As we find things, we're communicating with them along the audit, and they start taking corrective actions along the way. So they updated their policies, developed new procedures, and they also provided additional staff training. So again, this, just like most of the folks that we ought to investigate, are very cooperative with us, and when we come in, and again, most of the time accept our recommendations to help fine-tune government operations. Bonnie Welsh, she transferred over. She's now in the internal audit office of the county, was on our staff, and she was the one who worked on this report before she went. This was on the facilities development and operation, FDO in the county, they call it. They're contract and vendors. Now, again, here's a good example of, it provides an example of two things. One, when we start doing an audit, we began this audit, but we found one, that they were recently audited by the county, and we found out our review of the information, everything looked on track, that we believed the controls surrounding FDO were generally adequate, and we found to avoid duplication with the county's internal audit department and audits they had done and had planned, we stopped the audit in place. And we provided some suggestions to them that we found initially, but we moved on. But again, it provides another example of the need for a consolidated audit effort within the county, so we're not tripping over one another in any duplication of efforts. Then we did an audit of the town of Manalapan, their water utility department, and we found control weaknesses and a lack of backflow prevention device inspection certificates. Now this is some technical, and I provided this report to you. We're doing other audits in this specific area about this backflow issue, because municipalities can have clean water coming from their water plant, but there's also this system of backflow that they have to have inspections to make sure, in some of the backflow, it's kind of, in layman's terms, I would describe it like a drain, that you have the drain in our houses that have that little lip that stops. And so you have to have backflow devices in different places the water is going, so you don't have a backflow of contaminated water coming back into the cities, into the water system. Because once it's gone out from the water plant, again, it's clean. But to make sure that it's clean by the time it comes in the tap water, backflow is a serious issue. So we found out that they didn't have the inspections. We did not find any safety that there was contaminated water at all. But we did find out that they needed to have their certifications done. You need to inspect these things to make sure that the backflow system is working and operable. And we noted that to them, and they were grateful we noted that. And we're looking at that and finding that in some of the other municipalities, because, again, it's a safety health issue. Improper water meter readings, lack of process for uncollected accounts, and again, lack of written policies, you see. So they updated their policies. They now use the actual water meter readings for billing. They wrote off the uncollectible accounts. So we just found there were some accounts they weren't collecting on, and they decided to just write those accounts off rather than going back and try to recoup that dollars. And they provided additional training to the staff. Jennifer Timms did this report, the town of Cloud Lake on revenue. Small town, across Southern Boulevard, right across from our office. And she found that there were generally adequate controls. They did lost some potential interest because they had some of their money in a very low interest rate, and we pointed them to either one, the League of Cities have some information about where you can be receiving a higher interest rate, or checking around with the banks and receive a higher interest rate on that money that they have sitting in the bank to receive some dollars. They lack some support and documentation of the revenue, and they lacked validations for sales on tax payments by a leasee. And that leasee's the main revenue for the city. You've probably seen it, the big sign at the intersection of Southern Boulevard and I-95. That is on city property that is leased to them, and they get revenue from that. So we provided some recommendations to follow up on the revenue from that, and potentially making sure that they're receiving the money that's due them through the leasee. Megan did this survey, Economic Incentive and Development Survey, and this was a service we did, one for all of the cities, to make sure that they could compare and see what some of the other cities was doing in this area, and also provide information for us for potential future audits of places we might need to be looking into. And this was again about grant funds. We found 30% of the entities surveyed either issued funds or received grant funds, 20% issued 25 individual grants agreements in 2017, and 42% had either an external or internal audit conducted on those programs and agreements and grants. So the value of that is having an internal audit on your grants, and for those cities who did not have internal audits or any type of audit on the grants, then that gains our attention, and we're going to be doing some potential audits in that area. Now that concludes the activities that were done during that 6-month period, but there's a few reports that were just recently put out, and they've been in, some of them in the press, so we want to just highlight these, and if you have any questions, they'll be covered again in more detail in the next 6-month period. Again, Chris Dykman did this investigations about the county's Department of Housing and Economic Sustainability. Again, this area, we initially had 9 allegations that came in of wrongdoing, and we found excuse me, but they had 11 allegations of wrongdoing. We found 9 of them were not supported and 2 of them were. Some of the serious allegations that were not supported involved allegations that some of the county staff intentionally was not informing the Board of County Commissioners information that they needed to know intentionally, and that was not supported. Again, we had some findings, made recommendations to the county. They accepted all of them, and they take it. One of the findings that we had, they're supposed to have a commission for affordable housing. They had a hard time, a lot of the people on that committee, due to the fact that they had to, if they were doing any business with the county, it provided some conflict, so a lot of the members left, and they had a hard time filling the commission. In fact, there was no one on the commission. And so they had no members on the commission. They're required to have a commission, and we said, no, you have to work harder and find some people. And again, due to other pressing needs, they had not done that, but they're working harder to find people to put on a commission to provide that oversight to it. But one of the allegations was it was intentional. It was not intentional that we found, and it was just a matter of circumstances. But it was, they did not have people on the commission. Then another report that just came out was on the water utility department systems efficiency. Again, this is a great example, and again, Donna Wisniewski did this with her expertise. It's a great example of the team approach of the Inspector General concept in auditing. This came in through a complaint, a whistleblower complaint, into our hotline. It goes into investigations, and we do an analysis. How's the best way to look at this area? Sometimes it's an investigation, sometimes it's a contract oversight review, and in this case, it fit itself more for an audit. So the thing that an IG auditor can do, they can do an audit that's a result of a complaint that comes in. They can do an audit, a forensic investigatory audit, not just a performance audit, but one that's in conjunction and working with Donna, working hand in hand with our investigators and grabbing that expertise, working with our contract oversight staff, so you expand the ability of what that IG audit can do. And so, again, she conducted this audit, and we did find that there was a lack of proper approval. Now, again, the county, in this situation, again, listed in the report, that it was not a matter of anybody hiding anything, because the county administration was aware of what the water department was doing, because we had a plant that was coming in at the northern part of the county, and it was in the county's best interest to have this bottled water plant come in. Everybody wanted this. It's going to bring revenue to the county, and it was in the best interest even of the water department to get the water flowing out there, because it would actually save or be very efficient, because we had a pipeline going out to this part of the county that wasn't used, and so they had to be flushing it. So it made economic sense that all around, but the problem was the person in charge gave some authorizations that he should have gone to the county Board of Commissioners to give that approval. And so it was a procedural issue, not an intent issue, and not a hiding issue that we found. Nevertheless, it was a violation of the standards that we pointed out to them, so they can correct that, and now retroactively they can go either back to the county commissioners and get it retroactively approved. And if the county commissioners want to delegate that authority to the manager, they can do that. They just need to do it formally for the future, so we don't get in those types of problems again. And we also did, there was a small, I think this was in the news, there's an article on this in the news, on Palm Beach Garden, their economic incentive program. Again, we found that the controls were generally adequate controls. They did lack, again, you see again, lack of written policies and procedures, and inconsistency in the way they reviewed and approved the funds, and they were inconsistent with the monitoring. Again, they accepted our recommendations, made actions. Another, again, story where we help often, again, good people make government better and avoid preventatively in this aspect any problems occurring in the future because you don't have written procedures and policies.
General Carey?
Yes, sir.
A term that I've seen repeatedly in this 6-month report that I don't recall seeing as frequently in previous reports is the term generally adequate controls.
Yes.
For those of us who don't spend our time there, and certainly for those of us who do, can you define what that means? Is that a term of a generally accepted term in the IG profession? Just expand on that for us.
Yes. Generally adequate controls. That is a term that is used by some IGs. I'm not sure. I mean, it's an accepted term that's used. And we've been asked about that. One of the cities say, why don't you just say we were adequate, tell us whether adequate controls or not. Well, sometimes we find, again, generally, all their controls were in place, so they had a few minor issues. So I can't say you're perfectly compliant. What we found is there were some minor areas that we found that were not in compliance, but these were really not material. These were small issues. So therefore, we're not going to note that in the report. And it's also a way of giving an affirmative, I consider it a positive aspect to some of the people who we audit, to let the public know, hey, generally, their controls, are generally adequate. And so right off the bat, we're just not saying, here's something we found wrong. Here's these are things we found that weren't in compliance, and pointing that out. We want to let's give a general statement to kind of set the stage for everybody. When we came in, their controls were generally adequate. I'm not going to say perfect, because auditors, we'll find, some things, I suppose if we ever found that perfect, we might, that word's reserved, perfection. So we want to describe that, and that is a term that some IGs, again, a number of IGs that I know of used, and when we started thinking about it, Megan and I started thinking about our the way we do it on it. Another aspect of having new people come in with different ideas, that we want to make sure that, again, we present a balanced report. So that's what that term comes from.
So would it be fair to say that the immateriality of those exceptions would not influence the citizens' perception of the efficacy of their systems?
That said exactly what I was trying to say in such a smarter way. Yes, that is exactly right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Outreach and training. And as you know, this is a big part. This is a big part of what we do, that foresight role, that education role of trying to let not only people in government know about the office, educate about, not just about the office, we're educating about, in the government often, about, again, best practices, red flags, things to watch out for, and also their responsibilities, when to report things. And then to the citizens, we get out, again, to Rotary clubs. This time I went to Jacksonville, the Florida Government Financial Officers Association, and spoke, and I'm going to be speaking again at another conference here in June. Megan and Calinthia Dillard, my deputy / general counsel, she also has started to do public speaking and outreach for us also. So spoken to a lot of citizens this time, and that's up higher. Usually the citizens of government are closer together, but we spoke to a lot of citizens groups this time, in larger groups. Just some of those are just highlights of some of theirs. Some of you were in that one photo there of the proclamation, the county's proclamation. Even though it was for April, again, it was the Ethics Awareness Month, the proclamation going on. Again, I spoke at the Association of Government Accountants in Tallahassee during this period. They have me up and they spoke. I've spoken a number of places. People like to understand. There's a misunderstanding in a lot of people who work in government about what's the difference between accounting, internal auditing, external auditing, IGs, who are all these people, how do they work together or not, what's the differences, how do they work together. So I've spoken at a few conferences on that, and I've been asked, some people attend multiple conferences, so it kind of builds upon itself. So I'm asked to speak at a number of conferences on what is the differences, what's the benefits of IGs, internal auditors, external auditors. Again, we get our county internal auditors and IGs together quarterly, and also tips and trends, and again, a number of places we work. Now, budgeting and staffing. And I sent you this. Let me go back. I love this. The glass half full or half empty. Well, it's half empty in the fact that we don't have resources. We're still operating 8 years later since this office has been in operation at 57% staffing for all the county, the municipalities, the special districts that we have. And so, yes, we don't have enough folks to do the job adequately. However, the good side of the fish who's turned upside down there, I've got plenty of work to do. We all have plenty of work to do. There's things lined up, projects to do, so we definitely have a lot of work to do. Again, the deficit between that 57%, the 40 people, it was the 17 positions are unfunded. Last year I went to the county. I did a zero-based review of our organization from the start. So I went back and looked at it from scratch because the 17 positions was from what my predecessor had forwarded to the county, and the county commission had approved the 40 positions. But I went back to the county and realizing that, okay, that they had lost the lawsuit, the cities are not providing money, so let's look at what is minimally adequate staffing that I think we could do this job with. And I said, okay, 10 people as I think what we could do. So I'm already backing down from the 17 down to 10. And then in addition to that, I say, okay, I understand 10 people is a lot for the county. I said, can we just come up with 4 people for fiscal year 18? And then we'll see what we can do from there. Well, as you can see, what I received from the county was 0. But the county did say what they would do for us is go to the cities and ask them if they would voluntarily pay now for the IG. So that was the plan last year. Now, the plan was not successful. The cities did not voluntarily come up and say, yes, we'll pay for the additional IG personnel. And understanding that we're coming up to some future potential decrease in the property tax revenue. So this caused me to sit back and think, you know, okay, what do we need to do here? Okay, this is, I understand the county, we're coming into fiscally restrained times, and they just don't have money and positions to throw out there. So number one, I looked around, I started doing research, and also noted that the county internal auditor had come forward last year and stated that they did not have the resources they believed to adequately do their job. So they're underfunded. So we have the county internal auditor that's short on personnel. We have our office that's short. And what I found that I'll talk about, the model as government agencies create inspector general offices, internal audit staffs historically and by and large, move into the Inspector General office. So they don't have a duplication. Where you have an IG, usually you do not have an internal auditor. And the concept is not about, well, I found that, but this is all about reducing cost and gaining efficiencies. And this is why I'm recommending this, because I think it can reduce costs to the county, gain efficiencies by having one office that does audits, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Again, just the history, background. I was a federal inspector general before I came to Palm Beach County. And in the 1978 IG Act, where they created the statutory IGs, since then, in the federal government where they have inspectors generals, internal auditors do not exist. They were subsumed, or they became part of the Inspector General Office audit agency. In the audit world, usually people think about when you come in, there's either external or internal auditors. And so when somebody came to my agency and they said, "Who's the internal auditor?" I said, "I am. I'm the IG." We have that internal audit functions. IGs are internal auditors in the, and I know of no other federal agency myself that has an IG and an internal audit function. They're one and the same. So I call up the state IGs and I talk to them and I said, how do you do this? And I was informed that when they stood up the state inspector generals at each of the state department level, the internal auditors all came into the state inspector general offices. So they're still called internal auditors, the internal audit division, but it works for the state department inspector general. Of course, here in Palm Beach, I look around in Palm Beach County, when the clerk of the court stood up their IG office, they have an IG, they used their internal auditor as the base to build their IG office. They do not have an internal auditor, they have an IG. When the school board was considering, at one point they were considering using the county inspector general as their IG. They decided not to, but what they did, they took their internal audit office, they converted it to an IG, expanded functions, and what they're doing as an IG, and they no longer have an internal auditor. So to me, the conclusion I came to is, again, I've seen this is the evolution of internal auditing. And it's not about somebody better than the other, it's an evolution. As you create and have IGs, and I'll talk about the reducing duplication of effort, more money expanded, internal auditors have moved into the Yellow Book or into the IG. And I've been asked the question too, in speaking with some of the county personnel on this, they said that, wait a minute, we weren't with the understanding when they stood up the county IG 8 years ago that IG auditing was different than our internal auditing. And that's why we had an IG. And I said, well, I wasn't here 8 years ago, but I'm here now, and it's about the here and now. And I can tell you, as a certified IG auditor myself, IG auditing and internal auditing use the same Yellow Book, the government auditing standards, to do performance auditing and IT auditing. So in one sense, internal auditors and IG auditors do the same, performance auditing, as opposed to external auditors who do the financial statement. So in one sense, we do the same thing. But in another sense, we're different. In a bigger circle, an IG auditor not only does performance auditing, but just like we talked about that audit on the whistleblower and the audit that involved the coordination with the investigators, the contract oversight, they have this wider expansion that they can work with in a team effort with the investigators, the contract oversight. If they find something in an audit that is potential criminal, an internal auditor turns it over to, like right now, the internal auditor of the county turns it over to us, or they turn it over to law enforcement. If our auditors find something that needs investigation, they talk with our investigators, and they may just expand and continue doing it as a forensic investigative audit portion. So in one sense, we do the same thing. But in another sense, we are different in that we are, I like to call it expanded and enhanced auditing. So that's what we can offer. We can do the same thing, but in an enhanced IG team effort way.
Madam Chair, General Carey, isn't this, everything is perfect, what you were explaining, and I want to thank you for taking the time with your chief investigator the other day to explain this in great detail to me when I visited your office, but isn't the bottom line the independence issue? I mean, all of this is when the organization being audited can hire or fire people auditing them if they don't like what the results are. That is what I think a lot of us, I certainly feel, is the bottom line with all of this. I think this is a very unique proposal that you came up with, considering you've been frustrated at every step along the way with the budgeting process here. But I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Yes, it involves one difference, that's another difference, between auditors. And in fact, to go back to my presentations I make often, what's the difference between accountants, internal auditors, and IGs? Historically, and this is very broad, so forgive me other experts in auditing, but historically, back in olden days, in the beginning, we had kings, and the money from the government was the king's money. So the king created an accountant to tell me where my money is, to be accountable for my money, to tell me where my money is, because it's really all mine. Then we moved into boards. Boards have more of the citizens' representation over organizations, and so you have boards and commissions that says, okay, I like the accountants, but I want an additional check, so we create internal auditors to report to the board. And as democracy has grown and refined, we now have the citizens who says, we like the boss, we like the board, but we want an independent office that provides oversight and accountability, and that's what the IGs do. So the IGs report to the king, we report to the board, but we also report to the citizens. We have an obligation, that's the forte, the independence to the citizens, an obligation to report to the citizens about the accountability and the transparency of dollars and performance. And so the issue does become independence. That is one distinction that IGs have more than internal auditors. The internal auditor can be fired by the county commission at will, or I cannot. But they can fire me with the supermajority, and if I do something that's improper or illegal and the committee determines I should be fired, and then it goes to the board, they can, I could be fired also.
But I guess the other point is that rather than being fired, that the internal auditor might feel constrained from reporting certain things if they felt the reception at the boss level would be not well received.
I would prefer not to comment on that. I think that's an observation. But again, I don't like to, again, I want to make sure that this issue from Carey's perspective, it's not about us against internal auditor. This is about doing business for the county, for the citizens of Palm Beach County, more efficient, more effective, better auditing. My proposal gains 2 more working level auditors, saves conservatively, I think, around $100,000 a year for the citizens, for the county, but it's not, in no way is in opposition about my friend Joe Bergeron or the county auditor team or any county auditor team. This is just about what I've observed historically within the U.S. at all the levels, from the federal, state, and local level, and it makes economic sense, unity of effort sense, and it makes sense from a business perspective.
Not to belabor this, it's about effectiveness, it's about efficiency both. It is about avoiding subordination of judgment issues. My question becomes, because I'm not clear in your answers so far, and maybe there is no clarity to this point, is this becoming a best practice for IGs in the world of municipal constituencies?
For municipal constituencies, I would say it's a best practice in the fact that this is the way it's done all across the federal government, who's been doing auditing long, and had IGs all the way back to George Washington, from one way. So it's done at the federal level, and I could say it's in the state level. And again, here in Palm Beach County, we have two examples of IGs and no internal auditors. IGs are relatively new in the county and city levels over the past number of years. So we're an evolving in the state of evolution, and I think we're all moving toward what would become more at the federal and state level. But IGs are new, and there usually is a backlash, like here in Palm Beach County, of bad things happening. So we stand up an IG, and so it's just stood up. And so we're still relatively, as a organization, we're a new organization. 8 years is a baby in big pictures when you consider a lot of other organizations who've been doing this. So at the local level, I think we're evolving, and I think that's where we probably will go. I think that's where we should go, because again, it just makes perfect sense and in line with what other organizations who've been doing this a long time before us have determined is the best practice.
Okay, so you're telling me that in your opinion, based on your experience, based on what is going on in the IG world, that creating this merger of IA and IG is either a current or leading edge best practice?
Yes.
So my second question is, would that merger enhance the concept of independence, both in fact and appearance?
Yes.
Thank you.
And, I've spoken before, I'm on the National Association, I'm on the board of National Association of Inspectors General, and I've sent this concept out to a number of the board members and to a person. Everybody says this makes perfect sense. Either they have something, and we have it very good here in Palm Beach County, because I have a very good relationship with the county, with our internal auditor partner. There are some IGs that they've stood up, and the county, every time the county IG or the parish IG, if you're in one of those parish states, comes out with an audit, the county turns it over to their internal auditor as their agent to counter. Here's the counterpunch to the IG. I have an auditor, and so that's really bad, and that's counterproductive when you have dueling auditors. That's counterproductive. We don't have that here, but again, we could be much better.
Thank you.
Again, just effectiveness-wise, or efficiencies, again, no longer two organization heads. So right now we have two organization heads, it's reduced to one. We have, instead of two audit managers, deputies second in charge, we have one. Instead of two senior pay, people getting senior executive pay, we now have one, and that position then can be reduced along with the audit manager position, those two manager positions that, again, are receiving more pay and again, not doing on-the-level work, we can convert those two positions to working-level auditors. So we get more auditors, more coverage for less. And instead of 2 oversight boards, because they also have an internal audit board, we have our IG board, we have 1, the IG committee. And again, this is just how it looks in picture. I'm a picture person. So basically, instead of 2, they're mirrored organizations. Our audit division has 8 people. The internal auditor has 8 people. Each of them have 2 managers. We reduce that down to 1 organization with 2 managers. And how we can do that too is because I'm also not pictured on there. I'm a certified Inspector General Auditor who can provide oversight and senior management to the team. Now, we talked about efficiencies, effectiveness. Again, a single office. So now we have a single office that the county can come to. It's not confusing. Who do we go to with this issue? We want an audit done. We have 1 office that they can go to with audit requests, oversight questions. We have 1 organization. We're doing no longer duplicative annual risk assessments, no more 2 audit plans that are being put out. And we're conducting effectiveness, back to that, enhanced audit capabilities of an audit team that does audits in conjunction with investigations and contract oversight, and where they can expand and do forensic type audits instead of just the performance. And also, I finally put down there, in this plan, nobody loses their job, so nobody's fired. Their staff would come in and nobody would suffer a decrease in pay. So the current, in fact, so the ability to do audits for the county and the cities increased by 2. So we have more people to do audits for the county at less money.
General Carey, would you clarify something for me? You say no loss of personnel, and yet we're taking, and when you're downgrading positions, which means you're downgrading people. Is that seriously not reducing by?
Yeah, thank you for the question. In fact, I'll answer that on the next slide. Nope, not the next slide, but I'll answer that right now. In my time period, I recommend that this be a phased process, and a 3-year phased process. The current head of the internal audit for the county, his contract ends in 3 years, and he's eligible to retire in 3 years. So 1, he can either retire, or if he wants to continue employment with the county or anybody else, he has a 3-year notice because it's a contract. It's not a no, just like me. I don't think I'm here until I want to retire. You may decide it's time for Carey to retire and not give me another contract. So that's the whole concept of a contract employee. You have a contract, and there's not a guarantee after that. Now, fortunately, at the end of the current internal auditor's contract, he's eligible to retire. So he can retire, or if he wants to continue employment, he can look for another job within another position. So 1, he's not being told right now, he will continue his contract through the remainder of the 3-year term.
Yeah, well, you've clarified the question, because
Yeah.
I wasn't really aware that the IA was a contract as opposed to a more traditional employee
Yes.
relationship.
He's a
Okay,
contract employee.
that's fine.
And the second position, the audit manager, currently, we have vacant our audit manager, number 2 position. Megan, for all this great work she's doing 2 people's jobs. She's not only doing the director of audit, but doing the audit manager's job. So if this was approved, we would not fill that position. We would just take their audit manager and move them, and they would become the IG audit manager, the number 2 position, and the vacant position we then could convert, instead of an audit manager, into a working level operational auditor.
All right,
So
understand.
nobody would lose their job, nobody gets reduced in pay, they receive the same pay coming over.
General, I don't want to belabor this, but what's the difference between an audit director and an audit manager?
The director is the head, the overall head, and the manager's the number 2 supervisor. It's the first line supervisor. So,
I'm sorry, what's the difference in responsibilities?
well, the audit director has overall responsibility of everything that happens or doesn't happen for the audit, is responsible. In fact, in our yellow book, our government auditing standards, that's the person that again, the buck stops there. The nature of audits require multiple levels of supervision and oversight, not just one person. It needs usually 2 people. So usually the audit manager is the one who works operationally with the auditors and the work, and that's the first level of quality control, quality assurance is the audit supervisor. And then in an ideal world, then you have the audit director is the final quality assurance. So you have, it's a twofold quality assurance.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer?
Yes.
So I know there's challenges to this. I mean, the most obvious challenges is we have, again, there's a county charter. Just like the IG, the county charter requires that the county have an internal audit office. So the solution to that is during a phased transition from the IA to the OIG, the county charter will be amended. And we'll just, again, no longer need an internal auditor because the county charter has a inspector general that does all these functions. The second challenge, and we talked about that, the head of IA has a contract that goes until September 30th, 2021. The solution is, again, we do this in a phased approach as the people come over and the office exists and he has a contract until the end of his contract. So they can't be overcome. And here's the plan, the phasing of the plan that I recommend. 3 people to come over fiscal year 19, and the county begins work on amendment to the charter, because this has to go out for a vote. They have to do work, and it will go on the vote, so eventually this will have to go to a vote. 2020, 3 more positions come over, and then 2021, the county charter then is changed by then to be effective at the end of 21, at the end of the internal audit head's position in 21, when he, at the end of his contract, then the whole phasing process comes to the IG. We have 1 audit team, results, enhanced oversight team at a cost savings to taxpayers, more enhanced services for less, removes duplicative activities and requests from the county administration, and in line, again, with other evolved government oversight organizations. Now, I had a conversation with the county administrator when I briefed her first on this plan I think it was last week or the week before, and we talked about many of these issues. One, she said, again, not sure whether the county board of county commissioners would want to do this. And it came up, and I've spoken to a couple senior people within the county of back to the issue of control. And my answer to that is, and one, John, you know, we've got a great relationship right now with the county, outstanding relationship. What happens if we get a crazy IG, gets an IG that, you know, runs amok, and they have these auditors? My answer to that is, one, I don't think that's going to happen. First of all, because if you would question people at the state level and the federal level, this model that we have, a good working relationship, is the standard. You don't have, you know, crazy IGs running around there. But number 2, let's assume you do have a quote, crazy IG. Right now, I have authority in my charter right now. I could say, internal auditor, I don't care what you do, I'm going to come in right after you and do an audit, and I have authority and jurisdiction to do it right now, you know, and my successor would have that authority, with or without 8 additional auditors. So we have that authority right now if we wanted to be crazy, and I don't want to be crazy, and I don't know of other IGs out there right now who are fit in that category. So that's the answer to that. And number two, so another thing that came up is sometimes the internal auditor, the county can go to them at times and say, hey, can you just do a quick look into an issue for me and then report back? Do we need to do something else or do nothing? You know, make suggestions and not a big formal thing out of it. My answer to that is we can do that too. Under government auditing standards, that's called professional services other than audits. So basically, and we do that at times, we've done that in county issues and in city issues where somebody just wants to do this. That would be like a preliminary inquiry. We just look into this issue. Is this enough to really do something formal, an investigation or an audit, or not? And so there's a lot of things we informally look into, and we say, hey, there's nothing there to this, and we go back and we just make suggestions to management, and we go away. And there's no report in it because it was not material or significant enough to rise to that. So one, we do that already, and we could do that. So that's one alternative. Or number two alternative is the county could retain one internal auditor or two if they wanted to have a person just, you know, their person to do things for them. They could do that and then turn all the other auditors over to the IG. Now that may be the simplest solution because one, you don't have to change the charter. The charter does not require that the internal auditor have any specific amount of numbers. There are some organizations that have one county internal auditor. I think Martin County has one, did have one. There are some counties, there's a number of cities that have one internal auditor. So if they wanted to keep one auditor as a flexible person to do something, they could do that, and then we wouldn't even have to change the charter. So that's a possibility. However, I would definitely reduce the money because we don't need to be paying a high-priced person to do informal, non-audit services. So but there's an alternative that we could do. So that is my proposal. And again, I spoke to the county administrator, provided a copy of this just like to you to the Board of County Commissioners, and I plan on getting around to each county commissioner and speaking to them within the next several weeks to talk about this and ask any questions, concerns that they might have about this, so they can make again, it's a big decision, and we want to have all the facts and make it properly, and I want to be very transparent and open with everybody about this, and so I'd like to talk to them in the next few weeks so they can make their decision for the future.
Yeah, thank you. I think this was quite an interesting plan, and fortunately it has to be something like this, and we couldn't have gotten support back up the budget line, but you're to be commended for coming up with something like this.
Thank you. Okay, where we go in the future? Okay, the future, where we're going again, still working on the adequate staffing and this proposal for the consolidation, looking at more integrated resources. If you've noticed this time, this 6 months, we're evolving as an office too. And the longer we're around and the more our team gels together, we're being able to do audits and contract oversight and investigations all in a much more coordinated fashion. And some things can be done right now. We're doing a project that'll come out probably within, maybe at the end of this month, if not next month, that is a combined investigation contract oversight. So it's a combined effort totally, not just somebody has the lead on it. They're both doing this together. So we're going to be doing more and more integrated operations. We have a peer review. Again, the question comes up, you know, okay, I disagree with I don't think you have evidence, I don't like the way the outcomes of maybe some of your reports. Every 3 years, we are peer reviewed by the Association of Inspectors General that comes and looks at our office and looks at our reports and makes sure that everything that we say in our reports is backed up by evidence and that it's backed up procedurally right. And they produce a public report for the county, and they do this around the United States, that if we're not doing things right, they point them out to us and we get ourselves corrected. But every 3 years, we are peer-reviewed by the association, and that's coming up in July. We were recently, within the last 6-month period before this, we were reviewed by the Florida State Law Enforcement Accreditation Association on our investigations and passed 100% flying colors. So we're reviewed 2 times by 2 organizations to make sure that we meet quality standards and that we're doing our job right. Audit, working on executing their plan. Again, we're going to start getting into IT audits. We're doing an IT risk assessment right now. And again, this is something big, I think, for the county. Then these represents vulnerabilities in the IT world that we're just so glad to have Phil on board to start doing these in the future.
Is this related to the hacking and the vote concerns about voting and we've seen
Those,
arrests?
that's right, we're trying to prevent things like that, weaknesses, internal weaknesses within, so that it relates to that. And again, investigations are still working on the high impact, putting our new great folks to work. Oversight, prevention, education, and me, again, continuing on training and outreach. Again, I'm going soon in June, I'm going to speak at the national conference coming up for the FGFOA. And again, next year we're starting to plan already. We're planning on our National Association of IG conference is going to be held here in Palm Beach County, September 23rd through 26th of 2019. And that's a lot of planning involved in that. Okay, I'd like to end it on our real brag sheets of what we've done since we've been in existence here. In a short 8 years, again, it's actually $42.6 million of question cost, $23.7 million of potential cost savings. It's not only potential money we can recover or future costs if they make our recommendations, put them in place. 131 referrals to law enforcement or to Commission on Ethics or the State Commission on Ethics, other agencies. A number of those, again, came through our audit division. 18 arrests or prosecutions that have occurred in just 8 years as a result of this office. Make a lot of recommendations, 93% acceptance rate, hundreds of calls. We're the office that the citizens, people in government, leaders in government can call to voice their concerns, questions. And again, we're proud of what we do. I'm very proud of our staff. That concludes my portion of the brief. If there are any other questions for me?
Any questions from the commissioners?
No, General Carey, your performance and your team's performance is always consistently competent, and you represent the county and you represent your profession very highly.
Thank you. I work with good folks, great folks. Thank you.
I'd like to echo that.
Quick question, is your team still monitoring the 1 cent sales tax?
Yes. Again, another requirement came in. We are monitoring the 1 cent sell tax. In fact, our lead on that is Tony Montero, who really is the person to do that with his expertise in procurement, in contracting. So he is our main lead on that, though there's going to be a number, so he's watching it generally, goes to most of the meetings, is monitoring that, and as they start projects with the money, we will probably be doing some audits, in construction audits in that. So yes, we are.
Thank you. Well, I also echo the thanks to you and your team, and especially for putting this presentation together. And that will conclude the commission's discussion. We'll move into public comment. I have 3 comment cards here. First being Ken McNamee.
Are you going to read my card?
I
Or
can
do
either read-
no, I have a speech. I'll do the speech, okay?
It's up to you, sir, and we're going to, for all the public comments today, going to use the 3-minute timer clock. You may
Okay.
begin.
Okay, so you're going to read the comment card first, or do I do the speech first?
It's up to you.
Read the comment card.
Okay. My objections to the Delray Lifeguard Tower, Contract Oversight Report CA 2018-0034. Carrie, we do a thorough job and get to the facts. Hogwash. Slide, contracts are being awarded equitably and economically. Hogwash. Carrie, every time we requested info from Delray, they supplied it. That is false.
It's Mr. Montero, isn't it?
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Montero never got answers to his 26 and 226 emails requesting critical cost information from Missy Barletto.
Okay, there are my comments. This is my speech. Your staff took 6 weeks and 2 attempts to fulfill my public records request and provide me with their work product supporting the no competitive bid $145,000 Delray Lifeguard Tower report. My analysis set forth in my 5/15/18 email that Mr. Carey should have forwarded to you cites countless unanswered questions, missing documents, and errors. Please read it closely as a review of OIG work product that is substandard and lacking. Despite the OIG's namesake, Contract Oversight Specialist Montero wasn't an inspector, but rather an interviewer or an inquirer. Read his flailed attempt to justify the $145,000 cost on pages 12 and 13 of the report. I'm giving you an example of what he failed to obtain and inspect. 4 pages with yellow highlight for you to see some of what he failed to do, and not one reviewer even commented on its shortcomings. This is the 4 pages I have for you. The first page in the yellow highlight was in the package. It's Hartzell's bid. It says bricks and sticks. It should cost $126,000 a lifeguard tower. On page 2 is the independent subcontractor agreement, scope of work, okay? And you'll see the cost that the independent subcontractor says it only costs $77,000. That's his scope of work. All right, on the 3rd page, under definition of scope of work, the subcontractor shall provide all labor and materials necessary for the preparation and completion of the contract. So again, it was $126,000 is what the bid was, but the subcontractor will do the work for $77,000. Finally, on the last page you have there, I gave you as a quote. He relied heavily on a cost component of $80 for a bolt, okay? What I did was, it took me less than 5 minutes to go to the internet and get this quote for you. The stainless steel bolts, the 316s on there, the predominant bolt is a 12-inch bolt. It costs $31. The biggest bolt they have is a 16-inch bolt. That costs $46. And again, in your report on page 12, Mr. Montero stated it's an $80 bolt. He didn't look this up. So I'm giving you documents to show that they're not doing their research here. Commissioners, I thought the OIG's mission was to uncover and address municipal wrongdoing, still a rampant problem in Palm Beach County. Instead, the OIG work product was a love fest between the city of Delray and Messrs. Montero and Carey. Just read the files that I obtained. Countless Delray citizens were shocked that the OIG found no competitive bid $145,000 lifeguard tower contract acceptable. It's up to you 7 commissioners to right the ship. And in this instance, and in many prior, the OIG has failed the citizenry. OIG operations are cloaked in secrecy. It should be readily transparent and acceptable like the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation, another investigative body. It should be the standard bearer to open government. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Please make that change to the ivory tower culture that now exists.
Mr. McNamee, thank you very much. Your
Okay.
3 minutes are up, and thank you for your
If
time.
anyone would like to stay after the meeting, I'll go over this file with them with any minutes. Would any of you like to go over all the documentation I have, any of the 4?
Well, we're out
Okay.
of time for the public
Okay,
comment.
I know,
but
okay.
if anybody wants,
After a minute, I'll stay if somebody wants to go over the file about anything I've asserted here.
thank you very much.
Nobody wants to, okay, then I'll leave,
But
thank you.
If they do, they will certainly seek you out.
Oh,
Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to stay unless somebody wants to go over it after the meeting.
I don't want to go over it with
Okay, you don't want to go over it? Nobody wants to go over it? Is that accurate? Nobody? Okay, thank you.
Not at this time, but I'll certainly read, I'll certainly
You
read
have my
this.
information. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to Jonathan Lowe. Mr. Lowe, would you like me to read your comment card first?
No, I just have a few comments. My name is Jonathan Lowe. I'm a 25-year resident of Palm Beach County in West Palm Beach, and I'm a member of the board of the Palm Beach Ethics Coalition. And I just have some brief comments to say that with regard to John Kerry's presentation, that I think we are extremely fortunate to have someone who has the breadth of experience and the insight and knowledge and the innovative and creative, not to say wild, thinking, to come up with a plan like this that I believe will both improve the work product of the IG and internal audit groups, but will also save money at the same time. And so I certainly want to commend Inspector General Kerry for coming up with this idea, and on top of all of his other responsibilities, putting in the work to brief all of you and the county commission. And secondly, with regard to his presentation today, I think it underscored the fact that the IG's office is not just a gotcha agency. Their goal is to work with government and with businesses to make that interaction more effective and more efficient. I think the voters were wise 10 years ago in voting to create both the commission and the IG's office, and I think this just furthers the efficacy of that decision. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Sally Chester.
Thank you all. My name is Sally Chester. I'm a practicing registered nurse in the city of West Palm Beach. I have lived in Palm Beach County for 47 years. I'm also the past president of Leadership Palm Beach County and a member of the original Ethics Initiative. As a little bit of history, we were sitting around one day, a bunch of people from Leadership, and said, we don't want to live in Corruption County. What can we do? And out of that came our Ethics Initiative. Today I'm speaking on behalf of the Ethics Coalition, a group of organizations and individuals that led the citizen campaign to pass the original county ordinances and then embed in the county charter the Office of Inspector General, OIG, Commission on Ethics, and a more robust ethics code. I helped write that. The effort resulted in the support of 72% of the voters in the 2010 election. The charter language called for a 0.25% assessment on county and municipal contracts to fund the OIG and provide the minimum funding necessary for the 40 positions envisioned to effectively run the office. The county administration chose a different funding route. However, the responsibility still exists under the charter for the county to provide for a fully funded Office of Inspector General. Therefore, the Ethics Coalition respectfully requests that the OIG and county staff benchmark best practices and work diligently to design the most appropriate and effective organizational structure, staffing, and independence to continue to serve the citizens and the governments of Palm Beach County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Chester. Any other public comments? Seeing none, that brings us to agenda item number 6, new business. Is there any new business? Hearing none, that brings us to agenda item 7, adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you.